I pushed myself so hard because I didn't have the natural attributes or natural physical ability of other people. I had to work hard every day in training, twice sometimes days in training to keep at that level. Once I got to that level, I felt brilliant. My diet was spot on. My training methods, my confidence, my mentality was brilliant.
Welcome to Across the Line. Today we've got former Premier League player Dean Hammond on the program, the second Premier League player to grace us on the show. And today we get a real look into the realities of becoming a pro footballer. You know, there's plenty of highs, plenty of lows, plenty of twists and turns along the way. But with Dean, we get a real glimpse of what it's like to make it through and make it to the top tier of football in the United Kingdom. And Chris, of course, you guys go way back with Dean, all the way back to Brighton.
Yeah, so Dean and I were in the youth team together. We actually haven't spoken in probably on 20 years, so it was great to finally catch up. We've been speaking recently over social media, and he just has this sort of career that I think will resonate with a lot of the viewers, with a lot of the listeners. A lot of trials, a lot of tribulations, hardships, and ultimately overcoming that to play in the Premier League. So I think a lot of the listeners and the viewers will appreciate that and will connect with that. And I'm hoping, although it's a long one, they'll really enjoy it.
It'll be interesting to, as well, you know, you guys get a glimpse of the kind of footballing background that Chris grew up in. Back in England, you know, you get a glimpse of the environment they grew up in. And sort of the baptism of fire that was necessary for them at that time. It'd be interesting to hear as well if you guys have any thoughts on the environment that they grew up in and the environment contrastly that footballers grow up in today. There's plenty of things to unpack in this episode, and if you enjoy it, please do subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to rate and review, and look for us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on Twitter. Without further ado, we've got Dean Hammond on this Football Friday. Another treat here on Across the Line today. It's the second time that we've got a Premier League caliber player on the show. We've got Neil Etheridge in the past. Today we've got Dean Hammond on the program. How's it going, Dean?
How are you?
Doing all right. You are currently where right now? In England?
Yes, in England, in sunny Sussex in England.
All right. Things doing all right over there?
Yeah, very good. It's interesting times. It's a little bit different at the moment. But no, my family and my friends are healthy, so I'm grateful.
Over here in the Philippines, things are about to open up a little bit on Monday. Chris, how do you feel about this news?
I can't wait, mate. I cannot wait to get out and actually do something. It's been a long, it's 3 months now we've been in lockdown. So my kids just then out playing football, riding the bikes the last few days, which have been great. But yeah, fingers crossed in the next now and actually get back on the training field in some way, shape or form. Let's see how that transpires in the next few days with the government, hopefully easing some of these restrictions.
Man, it's been amazing over the last few months. You know, obviously it's far from ideal, our situation at the moment, but we're getting a real opportunity to speak to some very interesting people from all over the world. And today we've got a friend of yours, Dean Hammond, on the show.
Yeah, I'm actually really, really excited for this one. I was trying to work it out, Dino, when we last spoke, because I'm guessing it's about 18 years, something like that.
Yeah, it's got to be about that time, mate. It's been a long time.
And a lot's happened since then. A lot's happened. So can I just start off? I'm a bit resentful of the whole Premier League, only one Premier League caliber person. I've been on the show the whole time, John. That's a bit out of order. Like, you know, I didn't get to play there, but the fact, you know, caliber-wise, I think I was there. But whatever. I think we'll start with the interview now, because I think that's a little bit of a misconception. But no. So basically, for the viewers, for the listeners who don't know, Dean and I were in the Brighton Academy together. I think you signed when you were like 11 or something, 11, 12 years old, is that right?
11 years old, yeah. 11 years old.
So I came about a year after. So Dean's the age group above me at Brighton. But I want to start at the beginning anyway. But before we start, I just want to touch on my first session as a trialist at Brighton. You probably don't remember this. But I was, I think, 11 or 12. I just started secondary school and I got the invitation to join the club. So I go to the training ground, which is in Seaford, the old AstroTurf.
Yeah, Seaford, yeah.
Seaford, do you remember that? Oh yeah, absolute pleasure dome, that place. It was like a concrete slab with a slither of AstroTurf on top with a bunch of sand on top. And like an awful training field. So I do, just do the first session. At the end, it was a bit of a mixed bag, wasn't it, in those days? You didn't really necessarily train in your age group. It was a bit of a mixed bag of individuals. And I just seen this kid, and he's the first name that I picked up was Dean. Dean was the first person I picked up on. And the one thing he did, which I stole, and I still would use until I finished my playing days, was he was playing no-look passes from the very first session. So he was about 11 years old, 12 years old, and he's playing these no-look balls. And I was like, who is this guy? He's unbelievable. So I want to kind of start there, really. Like, how did you start playing? Like, was it a case of just playing with your mates at school, down the park? Like, what was your first introduction to the game?
Yeah, exactly that, Chris. It was friends, family, playing in the garden with my parents. When we were younger, there's a little bit more restrictions. We didn't start the age group as young as they do now in the academies and actually playing in teams. So it was playing with friends. My mum and dad were always interested in football, so I was always watching football on TV and just had a real interest straight away. It was no one had to ask me to play football or do you want to go in the garden or do you want to come out in the streets? I was out there. I was the first out there with the ball, ready to play, last one to come in. So just started from there, really, just the interest in football. There wasn't as much football on TV then, so you had to play it more to entertain yourself, which I think was a benefit to us. So it started from there, and my love of the game started from there, and it just grew. But then no look passes, mate. I don't think that was intentional. Too much credit there.
Well, yeah, maybe, mate. Maybe just a really bad misplaced pass. Did you do Sunday League? Did you go through the whole Sunday League process? Who was your first club?
Yeah, so my first club was, I'm born and bred in Hastings. So my first club was a club called Spartan, which actually my dad was the manager. So that was a bit of an interesting time because when you're younger, it's fine. You listen to your dad, you take everything in. As you get a bit older, you think, not so sure about that, Dad. Few arguments on the line and everything. But no, my dad started a Sunday League team with me and my friends. And Chris McPhee was in the same team, who was also in the Brighton Academy. It started from there, and then it was just going through the system until we got to 11 years old. And similar to yourself, we picked up was playing for, I think it was Hastings and Bexhill, which is like a bit of a district team, a step up from Sunday League. And there's a Brighton scout there, and we had actually a really strong team that year. And he picked 7 of us out to come over for a trial at Seaford. And it all started.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the 7 guys, anyone else got taken on? Obviously, I remember yourself and Chris McPhee, we played with for a while. Anyone else got picked up from that group?
From that team, not in terms of going to the youth team like we did. But
no.
It was, do you remember James Penfold?
Yeah, Jimmy Penfold. Yeah, I remember Jim. Yeah,
so he was from the same team. I can't think who else, Chris. There wasn't anyone else. It was a strong team, but a few of them, once you know what it's like, once you get to the academies, everyone's a good player. Everyone's a good footballer. So you really find out who's got some ability when you step up that next level.
Yeah. And just for the listeners and the viewers, you went on to high school at William Parker, which is it's a bit of a production line, isn't it? A lot of good footballers have come from that school. You're one of the most famous, but you aren't the most famous, are you? Because there is the more famous son of William Parker than you, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
So,
the record holder for the Premier League, Gareth Barry, comes from William Parker. So, which was great for us because we had someone to look up to. You know, he was in Aston Villa's first team at 18. So I think I was just leaving school then. So, exceptional player. Really, really good player.
Do you remember training with him at Brighton? Because there was probably a bit of an overlap there, was there not? Where he was still at Brighton before he went to Villa.
Yes, I think there was a year where he was there and I was there, or maybe just six months. And their age group was really strong.
Yeah, really good.
Really, really good. They used to, because at Seaford you had the Astro pitch. You start at you start at the top and you work your way down in the ages and they used to be down the bottom. So we used to watch him and stuff. But no, there was probably 6 months until he left to go to Aston Villa, and then, you know, the rest is history. But no, he was some player. You could see, I mean, really, you could really see from him that he was a player. He just had so much, he just had so much time on the ball. He was never quick. He was solely and dominantly left-footed, so I can't remember him using his right foot. But it would never bring an imbalance. He would always have time, always have space, and he was just brilliant. Didn't know him too well as a person or as a player, because he was a couple of years older than me. But he was always around the school, and you'd watch the school games and stuff like that. So he was a player to look up to.
I'm quite
a bit of a myth. Sorry, go ahead, Jing.
Sorry, before we go on with Gareth and as you move on into your career, I was quite interested to know, you made an impression with Chris right off the bat there, Dean. Well, you guys were very young. What was Chris like at the Brighton Academy?
Yeah, Chris was a very good player. Do you know what, Chris? Technically, fantastic. I mean, he used to love tricks, skills, taking people on, probably nutmegged me a few times in training, quite a few times. So no, he's a very, very good player, very talented.
You're not required to say that because you're on the show, Dean. You know, honesty is the best policy.
I am honest now. He's a good. Chris is a very good player, very good.
Oh, he's just making up for your misgivings on the intro, Jing. I think he's just trying to build me up after you knocked me down straight from the get-go. We'll probably touch on a little bit about that later on, Jing, as well, because it's something I've noted, and I want to sort of discuss and compare and contrast a little bit with Dino later. But obviously, you then work your way into that, the academy, come through the system. How did you find the academy? Because obviously that was quite a tumultuous period, wasn't it? I mean, I was only a year younger than you, but there was a lot of issues going on off the field. For those who don't know, we were based in Brighton, but we're having to ground share with Gillingham, so we didn't have a home base at the time. So it was actually a reality around, I would say, that mid-90s period where we didn't even know if there was going to be a football club. So, what was your sort of memories of being in the club at that particular time?
In terms of from until we joined the youth team, so from 11 to 16?
Yeah,
it was, a challenge, Chris, because, like you said, there was no finances at the football club. There was no budget. The youth team wasn't importance to the football club, or the academy wasn't, because, like you said, they didn't know whether there was going to be a football club. So there was no future plan. There was no trying to build the football club. They were in survival mode. And my age group, I was a year above you, but we used to get beat quite heavily by the teams, the London boys, the local teams. And that was difficult to take personally and collectively, because you're always comparing yourself to other players, and you're thinking, I'm way off this standard. I'm never, we're losing to QPR, we're losing to West Ham. They had young boys, but they felt like they were men. Not only their physique, but the way they played the game and the way they got coached. So we were a long way behind, I think, but it changed rapidly. I mean, up until probably 15, I think that's when Dean Wilkins and Martin Hindrell came in, and they made a huge difference. Even though the budget didn't change, there wasn't finances, just their mentality, their coaching, their vision for the game, the importance they saw in a club that financially couldn't buy players. Well, what's the best way to go? Let's produce our own. And they made a real change to the football club.
Did you ever think about leaving? Did you ever have an opportunity to leave?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to leave when I was 14, funny enough. I went for a trial at Aston Villa. So it was through the same scout that took Gareth Barry to Aston Villa. He was a local scout in Hastings. So I went up there for a 2-day trial. That didn't quite work out. I didn't get offered to be taken on there. But the same summer, I went to Nottingham Forest and I actually got offered the rest of my 14 to 16 at the Academy, or School of Excellence as it was. And then I got offered a 2-year YTS at Nottingham Forest. But I wasn't confident enough to leave home then. I didn't want to leave home. I didn't want to make a change then. I was quite... I don't know if you picked up on it, Chris. I was quite confident on the pitch, was quite reserved off it a little bit. Maybe didn't show. I wasn't massively confident in my character or personality on the pitch. No problem. Get me a football.
Yeah.
Play the game. I'm happy until I was comfortable with people. If I was comfortable with people and friendly with people, I've felt at ease. But before that, and that was probably one of the reasons why I didn't want to go. So, and we had Vic Bragg. You remember Vic Bragg at Brighton?
Yeah.
I used to love working with Vic. I used to love it. So he was a big reason why I didn't leave then as well.
It's quite interesting. I'm guessing you didn't have the same offer on the table from Brighton at the time, because there probably wasn't the foresight from the club, right? So that's quite
year to year.
Yeah, year to year, wasn't it? And I think looking back, that was quite. I mean, obviously you have to trade off that living at home, being with, in familiar surroundings with actually, you're a very single-minded individual. So you want to become a professional. That's probably that would have been the career-wise, that probably would have been the most, progressive move for you at that time. Why didn't you take it?
It would. Exactly. It was that. It was leaving home. It was as simple as leaving home. We went up to Nottingham Forest. It was quite a good. It was a good setup at Nottingham Forest as well. We went up for 3 days actually. And our parents came up for 3 days. So the club put us, all the players that were in trial, and the trial was with the age group that were already at Nottingham Forest. So they were comparing you with the players I had. So I suppose the players that were there were on a training programme, and the trialists would come in and we would join in. So we were actually playing against them. And we would all stay at I think it was a university at the time as well, away from your parents. No, it was really, really good. And I got offered the terms after the first day, actually. So I did. I had to do the 3 days, but the first day they spoke to my dad and offered the contract. But it was just the fact of, at that time, I was a Hastings lad and not really left Hastings except to come to Seaford and Brighton or an away game to London. Nottingham Forest seemed like the other side of the world to me, or Nottingham. And I didn't have the confidence to leave, to be honest, Chris. If I'm honest, I didn't have the confidence to think, if I leave home, what effect it was going to have on me. And I wanted to stay at home, and it was as simple as that.
I think that's really interesting, Jing. Like, we've talked a lot, haven't we, about youth football on the podcast. And I think one of the things that is massively overlooked, certainly in this part of the world, compared to, say, Europe, South America, is kids are having to make real serious life decisions at such a young age. And then obviously it has a huge bearing on how they end up progressing as a professional or obviously not progressing, because, obviously on the surface, that's an unbelievable opportunity to go to a club. I mean, Forest are a well-established club in the UK. I mean, they've won European Cups, and far bigger than Brighton was at the time. You got to remember, this is probably mid-90s, Dean, mid to late 90s, I suppose, at this point.
Yeah, it was.
And I think, there's a lot of pressure on young kids to make these big decisions. And I know, like I said, we touched upon this ourselves in our podcast, but it's really tough. It's really tough to ask people of that age, Jing, to make such important decisions, I think.
I'm kind of in a similar boat with Dean on this one. I'm not very familiar or not very comfortable getting taken out of my comfort zone in that kind of way. When you hear of here in the Philippines, for example, high school students, freshmen, so that puts them at like 13 years of age, being asked to leave what would be a province to go into a metropolitan kind of living, and to be asked to live with 13 strangers in a dorm room in an environment that you've never been in. That sounds terrifying, and you're going to be judged on your performance on the pitch, and that's all that anybody cares about, and they don't really take into consideration what your personal life is like, or how you're going along with that, or how things are, how you're coping with those type of things in that environment. So I can imagine that seems very difficult, and I completely understand the reasoning behind not wanting to go and make that step, even though career-wise that sounded like a fantastic opportunity.
I think one of the things I like to move on to, Dean, is obviously you progressed through to the youth team. So we all, up until 16, you're just part of that, or centre of excellence as it was known then. But really, the real benchmark to see whether or not you were capable of progressing to play professional football was if you got offered a scholarship at 16. So that's the time and the age when you leave high school. And then we were going full time into what essentially was a men's professional environment. What was your memories of being part of that scholarship program?
In terms of the scholarship in the youth team, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was when you're solely talking about us younger players being together, us players from 16 to 19 being together, us being a group, us being a team. I loved every minute of that. The training with Dean Wilkins and Martin Hinchwood was brilliant. It was quite ruthless, but in an educational way. They were giving you life skills as well as educating you on football. But I mean, at Brighton again, we come back to the academies. It's called an academy, but at the time it wasn't like that. We used to train near the first team. We used to be near the first team dressing room. It was you coming from I was a 16-year-old boy, and I was coming into an environment where there was men and proper men as well. So in terms of that, Chris, I found that difficult. That was an eye-opener, and that was pretty intimidating, if I'm honest. But when we were on our own and just as a group, as us younger players, I absolutely loved it. One of the best best times of my life, I'd say. Yeah,
I mean, I totally agree with the whole. It was intimidating, I can't really paint the picture for people outside of people who are in that environment. Like, you go from obviously being at school where you're probably the top dog, everyone thinks you're going to be the next big thing, and then you are literally bottom of the pile, surrounded by and by men, I mean men. Especially that group of lads at Brighton at the time they were men's men, weren't they? And it could be really, really, really intimidating. And they didn't pull any punches. They didn't care whether you're 15-year-old schoolboy or the nephew of the academy director. It didn't matter. It was pretty intimidating. But what was it about the academy or the scholarship experience that you enjoyed the most? Like, what were the things that you talked about there, like Dean Wilkins and Martin Hinchwood would provide us with, like things other than football, more kind of life skill stuff, essentially. But what was it about it that you particularly enjoyed?
I love the discipline for a start. I love the probably the routine as well. So being told where to be, what to do. They were basically because they were so good. They give us a format how to become a professional footballer. I think they were both ex-pros. Both have been in the game. Both seen ups and downs in their career. In terms of Martin Hinchwood, I don't know if you knew much about his career, but was a fantastic footballer and then really suffered with injuries and his career was cut short. So he had them life experiences. Dean Wilkins was a very talented player, but had the life experiences of trying to look up to an older brother who was an icon, an international player, captain of England. So he had to deal with that. And he was a great coach and a great player, but had ups and downs in his career. So in terms of on the football pitch and what they taught us, the technical side and the coaching that we had is still some of the best coaching I'd had through my whole career. And I worked with a lot of different managers, different football clubs, the type of coaches they were, and how dedicated they were to us as well. Because I think if you look at it, and I've spoken to Dino quite a lot, and you probably have as well, Chris, he kind of lives and breathes football, and he gave up his life, really, his family life and we became his family. He was so dedicated to that. And I think we were so fortunate in that aspect. So I loved my first, we had 3 years as a YTS, my first year, my second year, my third year. So again, and the experiences you go through in terms of playing football, but having to do jobs, clean balls, having to clean boots, having to clean the training ground, being tested by first team players, being tested by the first team manager. I loved all that. And unfortunately, wrongly or rightly, that's not in the game anymore. And I think that's missing a little bit because I think it was a little bit survival of the fittest at times, which is not right. But I think there is something in that to give you the mentality if you have to go into professional sport.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I wanted to really talk to you about was that, because I heard you talk about it on the Brighton podcast that you did a few weeks back. And I'm quite conflicted with it. I'm quite conflicted as to what is a better pathway for a young player to kind of go through. Like, it was a baptism of fire for us. But I think in going through that hot oven, it all made us become young men really, really quickly. But by the same token, I sometimes think to myself, like, I remember there'd be days where, we would have to sweep out the changing rooms, or we'd have to clean the boots or clean the gaffer's car, for example. And I'm thinking, I'd rather be on the training pitch working on my crossing, or I'd rather spend a little bit more time doing the additional stuff that I could do to improve my game. So I'm quite conflicted with that. I don't know what your take is on that. Like, if you had the choice, would you prefer to go through what we went through, or would you prefer to be in the environment that academy kids find themselves in now?
My answer to that would be there needs to be a balance. I think there's definitely value in both. So, like you say, when you go through the oven and we were getting tested every day, whether it was from Dean Wilkins, Martin Hinchwood, the pros, the first team manager, anyone, the medical staff. We were getting tested every day as footballers and as people, really. So I think there is some real value in that. Yes, not everyone adapts to that and not everyone likes that approach. So you could potentially lose players from the game that can't handle that. So their ability doesn't come out, their confidence gets hit, their personality gets hit, so they can't flourish. But I do agree with you saying, would I have liked to spend more time on the training ground? Would I have liked to had an individual program instead of sweeping the changing room or cleaning the gaffer's car? Yeah, I do agree with that as well. That could have made me a better player. Definitely could have improved my game better. But again, Chris, would we have done it? This is the thing, within that dressing room, not our dressing room, within the changing room, within the environment, would we have been brave enough to go, right, I'm going to go out and train extra? Because we would have been dragged back in by the first team. We would have been dragged back in by the first team manager. So there's lots of arguments for both. I just think it's gone too far the other way now.
Yeah.
In our day, it was probably too far the other way. It needs to be somewhere in the middle. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. Really, really interesting. Like, I had this conversation with a coach. He's from Sussex, coached in America now, but he knows both of us. And I'm going to have a bit of a long-winded story now, but there was a point to it at the end. And he said to me, because he was talking about my situation at the club, and I said, look, I think had the circumstances been different, maybe I would have made the grade. But at the end of the day, I don't think I worked hard enough in order to progress at that club at that time. Like, and I have to live with that. I have to live with that with myself. Unfortunately for me, it sort of worked out later on in my career. But, I have to live with knowing that I didn't make the most of the opportunity that was presented with me. And then he came and said, well, maybe if the environment was different, maybe if it was like it is now, do you think you'd have a better chance of being successful? And I said, well, maybe, because in terms of the style of play is very different now compared to how it was. Not that Dino wasn't progressive. Dean was very progressive at the time, but the game's changed a lot in those 20 years. The formations will probably suit more creative players like myself. The environment will be probably more nurturing. So I said maybe, but I don't really know. I said, I can't really say. But the one thing I did say, Dino, I said this. I said, one player who I think would make it then, and he did, and would make it today, and would make it in any era, was you. And I said, one thing about you that I really admired was you had this sort of quiet confidence, but also this single-mindedness, I think, about wanting to be a professional footballer. Like, there weren't as many of those people in that changing room that had your kind of mindset. I look back to when we would do fartlek runs, for example, and you would always be at the front. You'd always be on the shoulder of whoever was at the front. And even if a first team player was like, getting back, no, you'd still stay at the front. Whereas I would be more like, all right, I'll probably just stick in the pack and just not try to, create any kind of chaos. But so my question really is, were you always like that? Or was it a case of the environment forced you in that sort of single-minded and determined to want to become a professional?
It's a good question, because relating back to what we spoke about the Nottingham Forest thing, where I wasn't willing to maybe take the next step or take a bit of a risk, I think by not doing that, I did regret it. I regretted not doing it. Now, it worked out okay in the end, but I was always, like I mentioned before, when it came to football or fitness or anything like that, in terms of my mentality, I was just confident and I was willing to do whatever it took. Now, I don't think I was one of the most talented players. I didn't have the most ability, but one thing I did have, I was willing to give it everything I had. Now, for example, you saying when we were on the runs and had first team, but I used to get threatened every day. This is the mentality we were in, like first team players, because they know there's an up and coming youngster coming through that's going to take their livelihoods, it's going to take their profession. Now, if I'm fitter than them and I'm a better player than them, they're going to be threatened. Now, it didn't affect me why we were doing it. Now, coming off the training ground and going back into the dressing room or the canteen, worried, really worried. I used to hate it. I used to stay in our dressing room as long as we could. I didn't want to train with the first team because I knew it was going to be a challenge. But I always found something in myself that I've got one chance and this could be it. So every day I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to try my hardest. And that was my mentality, really. I just was going to work as hard and get everything out of myself as I possibly could. And that was it. It was a simple formula. There was no intelligence really about it. There was no, right, I'm going to plan this out and I'm going to look into the future now. Just like every day, single day, I'm going to give it everything. And luckily enough, I got a bit of luck along the way. I got a few breaks here and there, but no, that was why I think potentially I had a long career in the game, because that continued all the way through, whether I was 17 till I was 33, 34 when I finished. Now, at the end of my career, it was the worst thing I possibly could have done because I worked too hard. But during that period, it worked for me. And that was my formula, just to work hard every single day as possibly could.
And that's why, Jing, and that's why I said that to the coach who I spoke to. Like, he would make it in any era, Jing. He would make it in 20 years' time, 40 years' time. It doesn't matter because you move with the times. But when someone has got that sort of mentality, when someone's got that determination and drive, they'll make it. And we'll touch upon it later, Dino, but I know you sort of you had backward steps and you had to go out on loan before you got your move, but before you got your chance. But I still think even if you got released by Brighton, I still think you would have made a step down and you would have come back up. That's the other thing I said to the coach. I said, maybe even if you hadn't made it at the club, circumstances were different, I still think that I always thought even if you had to take a step back to come back up, you would end up at the pinnacle. That's how I saw it. But Jing, it's really interesting that we talk about his mindset. I mean, it's something that we've touched upon with some of the elite players that we've had on the podcast, hasn't it? I mean, Neil talks about it a lot with him, and it's not always bravado. It's because sometimes that comes to the surface. Like, people think everyone's going to be this supreme confident, strutting about the place, knowing that they're going to make it. But Neil was talking about the same sort of things, Jing, wasn't he, on our interview, that he actually has a lot of insecurities, and that was actually conversely what drove him.
Yeah, it's not like they're all fighter pilots. It's not all A-type personalities, but it's seemingly, though, there is always a confidence when you're on the pitch. But what I'm interested in, when you guys were talking earlier about the sort of the environment that you guys were brought up in, when you guys were in the first teams and in more senior positions, you guys didn't perpetuate that kind of environment moving forward, or did you? Actually, I'm quite interested to know how you guys changed what the life was like for individuals who were coming through.
I mean, personally, myself, I would have tried to do the opposite. So I would always try and make younger players welcome. I would enjoy the challenge. So if a younger player was coming through, because in terms of mentality, I felt that made me better as well, because I'd want to improve again. And I always felt I could learn off whether it was a younger player or an older player. And the experiences I went through personally of the challenges, I didn't want younger players going through that. I didn't want them to feel intimidated or scared. I wanted them to embrace the challenge, because I always felt it would make me better. So it could have been a selfish thing because I wanted to make myself better and improve myself, but I would never use someone else to better myself or think, all right, I'm threatened here. He's a better player than me. He's going to take my position. No, I'd embrace the challenge and go, okay, that's good. You're going to make me go 1%, 2%, 3% further or harder. And if I couldn't make the grade, great. I learned a lesson about myself. Right, this is my limit. Maybe, like Chris mentioned, I have to go to another club now. I have to step down to come back up again. I was always very conscious of making people feel welcome, because we didn't always get that, Chris, did we?
No, definitely not. definitely not. And I think, like I said, it's very hard to describe just how sort of cutthroat that environment was. But for obviously for yourself, it led you to, go through that baptism of fire and come out much stronger at the other end. But one of the things I want to touch upon about that, because it wasn't a straight line for you, was it, to get into the Brighton's first team? Sort of going back to your question, Jing, a little bit, because you made your debut at what, 16, 17?
17,
how old were you? 17. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Wow.
I've got. So you went. I remember the story. So you basically got called up. You went to the first team. Then you had to go home and get your suit, didn't you, or something? And then you came in. Was that the day? Was that the game where something happened? Like your car broke down, or something? There was an issue with it, and you showed up to the game late. Was that your debut, or was that later on?
That was later on. So that wasn't my debut.
Okay.
But in terms of that happened again. So I made my debut under Mickey Adams as a manager. Came on against Cardiff for about 20 minutes, I think, and then I wasn't part of the first team plans for a while after that, and then got a chance again when I think Peter Taylor was manager. Peter Taylor came in, so it was maybe a year, 2 years later. No, a year later, 18 months. So I was still in the youth team. And I had to go home, same scenario, go home, get my suit. Mum and Dad would bring me back this time, where previously I got the train back over. And our car broke down on the way. So I remember getting back. I was thinking, and I thought I had a chance of being on the bench or even playing. So got my suit, sitting in the car broke down. Eventually, after hours, Dad got it going again. We got to the ground, and I running through, the with team, running through the car park, running through the crowds. Got to the dressing room. Tried to go into the dressing room, couldn't get in. So the door, so I'm banging on the door. So I think trying to shut the door. Anyway, the assistant manager's standing the other side. So usually when they're doing a team talk, they don't want anyone coming in, like someone from the opposition, an official, even a tea lady to bring the tea in. So I'm smashing against the door, more aggressive. I'm worried that something's going to happen. Pushing. Eventually, I smash it and I move the assistant manager. It bursts open. I come into the dressing room and just all the players are sitting there laughing at me, looking at me. Managers like staring at me. I was thinking, oh no, could this get any worse? Anyway, sat down. I wasn't even on the bench. Wasn't even involved. And it was a rainy, cold night. I sat in the stand in my suit at Withdean. There's no cover. I got drenched. I was just thinking, right, is this professional football? Is it brilliant? This is great. Interesting time.
Oh, brilliant, mate. I couldn't remember all the details of the story. It's much better how you told it. So I appreciate I appreciate you telling it. That was amazing. Because so you had that period, didn't you? Sort of 2 years almost, where you hadn't played the game after making your debut, and then I'm guessing you played a few games before you went out on loan to Aldershot. Is that right? Had you played any games thereafter? Before you went on your Aldershot loan?
So when I turned from where we finished our YTS program contract, I signed a professional contract under Peter Taylor. He then left in the summer, and Martin Hitchwood became manager, our old youth team. So Martin actually became manager when we just got promoted. We were in the championship. So I played a few games under Martin, probably 4 or 5 games, and then he got the sack, and Steve Coppell came in. Steve Coppell was quite honest with me, saying that I'm not really interested in playing the younger players. I'm going to bring in some experienced older heads because we're in a relegation battle. So fell away from the first team fold. Didn't really train with the first team. I was back training with the reserves and the youth team a little bit, and then eventually went out on loan to Aldershot, which was not something I was massively keen on at the time. I was a little bit worried. And
who was the gaffer? Mark McGee? Was Mark McGee in charge at the time?
Mark McGee was manager then. I wasn't in his plans. We weren't, but we were doing well in the league, so I couldn't really argue. This is the problem. The first team during my period there where I wasn't playing, were winning games. So I had no grounds to suggest why I should be playing, even though I thought I'm good enough to play. But ended up at Aldershot. But like I say, I wasn't too keen on going. It was Dean Wilkins that persuaded me to. I'd fallen out of love with the game a little bit.
Really?
And he just persuaded. Yeah, a little bit. Just because I felt as though anything in life, I feel as though you get your just rewards. I felt as though I was working hard. I was dedicated. I love my profession. I go in every day and train hard, whether it's with the youth team or first team. And I just wasn't getting the opportunity. I wasn't getting the chance. I wasn't getting a loan move that I thought are justified. But you don't get that in football. You only get it in football. You know, you get an opportunity and you just have to take an opportunity. And Dean Wilkins persuaded me to go to Aldershot, just to go and play some first team games, go and experience a first team environment again, go and experience a first team match where it's important. You're playing in front of a crowd. Things are expected of you. So I went with a heavy heart, thinking I wasn't going to come back, if I'm honest. That was why I didn't want to go, because I didn't want to leave. But it worked out brilliantly, and I loved my time at Aldershot. I really did.
Because they were League Two at the time, right?
No, they were in the National League, so they weren't even the professional.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, It was twice a week. I used to train at Aldershot on a Tuesday and Thursday evening. And one of the Tuesday night was just running around the pitch. It was just a fitness evening. So it was really, really different. But it's them experiences that actually made me realise, no, I want to be a professional footballer. Nothing against Aldershot or the non-league game. I just wanted to stay within the professional game, because I didn't want to be training twice a week and then having to go and find a new career or a new job. I was still contracted to Brighton, to a professional football club. So that experience really, really spurred me on.
Because you did have a short stint at Leyton Orient, didn't you? You did another loan move there. So they were in League Two. Is that right? So they were in League Two at the time.
Yeah.
And then you came back to Brighton and found yourself in this awkward predicament, right? So you're basically given 3 months to save your career. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah.
Talk me through that. I mean, that must have been a real strange conversation. And how did you sort of get your mind right to prepare yourself to do what you needed to do in such a short 3 month window?
Well, it's a strategy. Well, I was actually offered a year. So I was offered a year contract halfway through, towards the end of that season.
Okay.
The club got promoted to the Championship. I went in and had the end of season meetings like you do with a manager to review what you've done, what potentially the future holds for you. And Mark McGee was the manager, and he just said, look, we're not going to give you a year anymore. We'll give you 3 months. So you either kind of take it or you don't. We want to... And again, I took it as a test, Chris. Like, because we've been tested all through our careers, I took it as, right, okay, you wanted to see how much I actually wanted to be at the club or wanted to be professional. And I just went home with disappointment, thinking my career was over. But my parents were brilliant with me and just said, look, why don't you just give it everything? Why don't you spend the summer getting as fit as you possibly can, get your head straight, don't go away on holiday, train during the summer, and then go back to pre-season fitter and stronger than you've ever been, and give it your best. And then if it doesn't work out, at least you can say you took the opportunity. And that's what I did. And to be honest, at the start, it didn't work out. I went back really fit, was doing really well in pre-season. Then I picked up a little injury because I overtrained, and then fell away again. And fortunately enough for me, the first team weren't doing very well, and I eventually got an opportunity, and then the rest is history really from there.
So what were you doing during that pre-season? Sorry, the pre-season, so to speak. Because you said there you went away and got yourself really fit. Like, what were you doing? Were you just going out running on your own? Did you hire someone to go and work with you? Like, how did you get yourself in shape for that month window before you go back for pre-season?
Well, at that time there wasn't anyone you could probably hire or with the expertise or you would know of that you could train with. So it was just on my own. It was more. I was always fit enough, Chris. I was always strong enough. It was a mentality thing. I had to push myself. I had to find something within my mind to go, okay, I need to go to the next level now. I need to be stronger mentally. And that I found that through training. I found that through working even harder, which obviously made me fitter, which obviously made me stronger. But they weren't the attributes I needed. I needed to become mentally stronger. And I needed to get to that point now where I believed in myself. Right, the only person who's going to do this, the only person who's going to change the situation is myself. I'm not going to get any help from the manager. I'm not going to get any help from the players. If I want to get in this first team and I want to be at Brighton, I have to do this myself. And that was a real switch in mentality, real switch of, okay, I felt the full responsibility that it was all down to me now. I'm responsible for my outcome of this action. Whether it means being at Brighton or another football club, I'm going to make myself a professional footballer and really believe that I'm a professional footballer. So that was the mentality I had. And I just, it was nothing, there's no rocket science. I was just running and I was swimming and I was going to the gym. There was I wasn't doing anything special or anything different. That was it.
This was around what, 2021 for you?
This would have been, so it would have been 2021, yeah.
Wow, that's quite a spot in your life so early in your development as well. Do you think as if the tough upbringing that you guys went through in the academy at Brighton and being in that kind of environment helped you in that kind of spot?
Yeah, it probably helped me at that point. It hindered me before because that's probably why I felt like I did in terms of confidence and self-belief. Because Chris will tell you, if you were doing well, any player, whether it's 1 game, 10 games, you'd be shot down. You'd be knocked down because people would see you as a challenge or a threat. So that probably manifested in me a little bit and grew in me without me actually knowing. But yeah, in the long run and in terms of changing that situation, I finally realised it was down to me, and I finally realised that I need to work harder. I need to become stronger. I stopped blaming other people, basically.
I think that's brilliant because I'm guessing that was basically the catalyst for your whole career. It was basically the springboard for everything else that happened thereafter. So in essence, we probably have to thank Mark McGee for offering you such a horrific terms because by the end of that season, you'd become one of the fulcrums of that Brighton team.
Yeah, we stayed up that year eventually in the championships, and I scored a few goals. I played a few games. Funny enough, in your laugh, Chris, I was playing left wing, which is not my strongest position, mate.
Okay, well, let's stop this here first, right? Okay, I've got to clear this up. Right? I've got this because I've got some notes that I've written down here, Jing. Right, so I've got like a rough outline of things I want to cover, and in like bold font, like in capital letters, is Dean Hammond, left wing goal scorer. Which I'm kid you not, right? I played with him from the age of 11 till I was 19. So at 9 years, I don't even remember him scoring a goal in training. Then all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, in the championship, right? Second biggest league in the UK, and he's scoring goals, playing left wing. What on earth was going on there? Can you just talk me through what was the logic in you playing left wing?
I don't know if there's any logic, mate. I think that's just I found myself in that position. It was a narrow left wing. I wasn't getting forward, taking the full back on, or overlapping, or making runs in behind. It was more the fact. I'm trying to think who played right back or right wing. It was more the fact that Gary Hart was playing right wing, and he used to put a lot of crosses in. He was pretty direct, Gary, pretty quick, and just whipped the ball in. And Mark McGee, just obviously I was 6'1", just wanted me to come into the back post, wanted me to come into the middle of the box, arrive late from the left wing, and try and get headers, try and get maybe volleys, trying to get across my defender, come on the blind spot of the fullback, and that was it really. There was no tactical genius behind it, or let's play 3 midfield players because we can have more possession. I mean, some games we hardly touched the ball, so it was more. And I was fit, Chris. I could get up and down. So if we broke and we had one up, I was the one that had to try and get forward. We'd lose it. I'd have to get back. Believe me, I came off them games shattered. So, but I didn't touch the ball much. I think I probably touched the ball with my head more than my foot during them games. So, but it worked out, and it was fun. It was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, honest to God, Jing. Like when I used to see on Sky Sports, they would do like the setup of the team. And when I started seeing that he was playing left wing, I think I almost retired. I think I did retire for a couple of weeks. I said, there's no point. I'm just gonna give up. If he's playing left wing, like, oh my God, unbelievable. But actually, I tell a lie. That's not actually strictly true because there's a couple of players actually at Brighton who I thought was sort of underutilized in the sense that if Wilkins is listening to this, he's going to kill me. But like Dan Harding, for example, was really good going forward. But I think he ended up sort of becoming this either defensive midfield player or left back, maybe through necessity. And he had those qualities as well. But I always felt like you did have more attacking prowess than perhaps maybe some of the tactical deployments would suggest. I mean, we had a lot of attacking players, especially in our youth team, for example. So maybe that was just the role that you undertook because you had a lot of players who just had probably more attacking flair. But I always thought and I don't know if this was something you worked on or it just happened organically because you tactically you were really, really good. But did you feel at any point, like were you like an attacker when you were younger and you felt you could just sort of bring up some of those goal scoring instincts as you got older, or you just more if I get myself in this position 10 times in a game, one time it's going to fall to me, and I've just got to be there to stick it in.
Yeah, basically that law of averages, Chris. I used to have to try. My job was from that position was always be on the end of crosses, always be in the box. So, I mean, my ratio must have been horrendous because the amount of times I got in the box and the amount of runs I meant to actually making contact with the ball in the box or getting a shot on target or scoring a goal probably wasn't the best. but I went along the lines of the more times I get in there, the luckier I get, the more opportunities I get, and eventually one will go in or one will fall to me in a good position. So it was basically that. But yeah, I mean, in answer to your question previously as well, yeah, I was always one that I was very conscious of. I want to have a career in the game. I want to play. So I was like, I want to be in the team. So if that meant I had to be a defensive midfield player, or I had to play left wing, or the manager asked me to do a certain role, I was happy to do it because I just wanted to play and I wanted to be a footballer. So
yeah,
could I have scored more goals potentially? But was I happy just playing most weeks? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously from there, your career at Brighton just went from strength to strength. Obviously, Dean Wilkins then came in as the head coach, right, the gaffer, and brought in like a new era, didn't he? Really, with I mean, you then became like one of the senior players under his helm, and there was like a influx of young players that came through. It was like a lot of resurgence of academy players who came through the system, and then all of a sudden you're probably the elder statesman in the team. What was that time like? What was that period like under Dino? When you were sort of all of a sudden you were the more senior, if not the most senior player on the team.
Yeah, it was brilliant, Chris, because it went back to the youth team days. Really, we started training like we would in the youth team. The tempo of training went up because it was younger players. It was more enthusiastic players. That's nothing against the older players or the players that were there previously, but they were coming towards the end of their Brighton careers. And Dino wanted to change it. I felt more comfortable and happy to take more responsibility as an older player. So I think that helped my game and improved my game. Dino obviously made me captain, which I was very proud to do at the age of 22, 23. So it was really, really good. You can associate it to Chris because it would have been exactly like we were in the youth team. In terms of Dino would have us, there would be a real structure. There'd be a real reason and theory behind what we were doing and how we were playing. Preparation for games really improved in terms of on the training field. We were limited in what we could do off the field because of the finances. But it went, and this will be probably strange to say because we weren't as successful as the teams previously before us because they'd won promotions and been in playoffs and stuff. Mm-hmm. The club just became a lot more professional, really did. It became the approach towards training and games and the reason why we were doing the things we were was really, really, really professional. And you'll know that because of what Dino's like.
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny one because I looked at that group and I know you talked about your youth team that you had in your age group and you didn't think it was great. You didn't have the best year. I mean, the 6 of you came through together with decent, but I think that there was quite a significant drop off between the 6 kids that got scholarships and then the rest of the group. But I always think my age group was unbelievable. I always thought our age group was really strong. And I know that like that group of lads that came through, like Tommy Elphick's group that came up through the ranks, Fraser, that group. I think Coxey's is maybe a year or two older. Jake Robinson, that crop of players came through all at the same time. And I sometimes think, had like Dean been in that scenario when we were coming through at maybe 17, 18, I think things might have been a bit different. Like for like my group, my era. I mean, you're older than me, but it's a shame really because when we came through, I think in my 3 years we had 2 promotions and a relegation, so there was never really the opportunity to blood youngsters in that because they were always either going for the title or trying to stay up. But one thing I'm quite intrigued to find out with Dino, because I obviously wasn't at the club at this point. What was he like with bringing through the younger lads? Like how did he approach integrating some of the younger lads into that first team? Was he more nurturing, or was he still quite? Was it still that kind of baptism of fire like he would be when he was trying to mould us when we were in the youth team?
Yeah, baptism of fire, definitely. He was. He wasn't easier on them. The one thing he did, he would give them the opportunity because he believed in them, because he'd seen them from a young age. He'd seen what they could do, and he trusted them. He really trusted in their ability. Now, whether you don't, it's difficult to judge a player or know a player until the player's in the environment, as in on a Saturday afternoon in front of 10, 15,000 people playing professional football. You just don't know. But Dino was ruthless, I think, but in a good way, a fair ruthless. If you're good enough, I'll play you. And if you work hard enough, I'll give you an opportunity. There were his two things, really. So with the younger players coming through, they knew if they performed every day, they listened to him, they would get an opportunity. And you're right, your age group, my age group, the age groups around that era at the club, it was so difficult to get in the first team because the first team were doing so well or were really struggling. The style of play didn't suit how we played in the youth team. So we didn't play the same way as the first team. We played football. We were progressive in possession. The first team were playing behind and just try and get up the pitch and were aggressive. So we weren't really being bred and made for the first team. Now, you could say that's Dino's fault or the manager's fault. Who knows? Or the club's philosophy. That could have been wrong. So it was hard to get an opportunity. You're right.
Yeah. But I mean, how did you? It's a bit of a touchy subject, I'm sure. I mean, you spoke a little bit about it on the podcast that you did the other day. Did you see yourself trying to go through your whole career at Brighton? Could you see yourself being like a one club man and trying to progress through the system? Because there came a point in your career at Brighton where it seemingly, I don't know, things went a bit sour. Like I know you spoke a little bit about how you were depicted in this way of being this sort of mercenary type character, because obviously by this point you're captain of the club. You obviously, like I said, the mainstay of the team, leader of the group, and then you sort of found yourself in this tug of war between the club and yourself, fans, whoever. And I remember it happening, being like, "Yeah, like why can't they just get this right?" Did you want to leave, or it just got to the point where there was too much water under the bridge, and you felt, I'm just going to have to get away from this because it's becoming detrimental to my career?
I never wanted to leave. It was never my approach or my idea to leave. I was never planning to leave because Dino was manager, I was captain. I was enjoying playing with the players we were playing. I was enjoying the style we were playing. I could see the club was improving. But because I was captain and I was playing every week, I wanted a fair contract, Chris. I wanted, I was getting to an age where I suppose money was I was starting to consider money in terms of, obviously I'm in a career and I love playing football for football, but it is my livelihood. I knew players within the squad were on a lot more money than me, and some younger players as well, because I was still based on my previous contract. And I was having interest from other clubs of a higher level, of a bigger stature. So my head wasn't turned, but it was like, okay, I want to, if I've got an opportunity to achieve something in my career, I may have to leave. But, the stories that were written that I was saying the club weren't being as ambitious as I wanted to, suggesting that I was demanding we sign players because I wanted to play in the Championship. That was completely wrong. Never suggested that, never asked for that. I knew the financial situation of the football club. I knew the situation and how difficult it was for the club. So I didn't ask for anything that wasn't being paid to anyone else. And as soon as I knew the club didn't want to pay me that, in terms of from the chairman and the director, then yes, I wanted to probably leave and further my career. I didn't feel any loyalties or reason to stay after that, and the club made that pretty clear. So I think it worked for both of us in the end, but I was obviously made the fool guy out of the situation.
Yeah, did you find that difficult? Because you've been at the club for so long, and then all of a sudden fans start, accusing you of things, and the media obviously accusing you of things that obviously weren't true. Like, how did you How did you deal with that?
It was hard, yeah. It was difficult because it was upsetting to my family because we're from Sussex. So obviously Brighton's the biggest club in Sussex, and it reflected on my family. Me, it didn't affect my football and affect my mentality. I was on to, right, okay, I want to concentrate on my career, but it wasn't nice. It wasn't nice seeing things written about me that I couldn't even justify or argue against, because as a player, you don't come out in the press, you don't protect yourself, you don't give your side of the story. So that was hard. And I don't know why, Chris. I mean, usually you see it in clubs. If a youth team player comes through the system, gets into the first team, plays in the first team, becomes captain, he's really appreciated by the fans and loved by the fans, or even liked by the fans. For some reason, maybe my style of play, maybe I wasn't exciting enough for the fans. I don't think they really ever took to me. Not in a bad way. They were always supportive of me in that period, but I never thought, or maybe it's just my feelings, I never thought I had their full support or justified why I was captain or playing regularly. That's how it felt to me.
I felt that about a lot of youth team players coming through the system, though. I felt a lot of the lads who came through the academy, I felt were vilified by a lot of the fans. I don't even remember this, but Chris McPhee played. He played a game under 7. He was probably 17, 18, and he I think Bobby Zamora was injured or something, and they just got thrown into the first team. He played 80 minutes, and it was an absolute mud heap at the Withdean, and he worked his socks off. And yeah, I mean, a couple of times the ball bobbled off his shin and that, because the surface was terrible, and the fans were just on his case. And I think if that was an established player, like no one, like most clubs, I think get behind their youth team players, and I think they try to support one of their own. I definitely got that vibe off of Brighton. I mean, what was it like with the other lads? I mean, like with the likes of Coxey or Jake Robinson and these guys, like were they quite ruthless with those guys as well if they had a bad game?
No, see, that's what there was opposite with them, because they were quite exciting. They got fans off, they got the fans on the edge of the seats. They made things happen. There was opportunities. They did things that were, exciting. Basically, they would score goals. They would do the better side of the game. I always felt they got more support. They got more. What's the word? They got an easier ride. Put it that way. But I think it just reflected the situation at the club at the time. The club was just, we weren't at our own stadium. We're at Withdean. We were a mid-table League One team. Previous seasons, they'd be going get promoted, relegated, promoted again. We were playing a better brand of football, and it was better to watch, but we weren't winning as many games. We weren't scoring as many goals. And I think that just reflected on coming back to, why are we playing these younger players? Why are we not going to buy players? And I think that came across from the crowd to the players. And it didn't affect me, but I could again, we went back to the mentality. Could players of them younger players have better careers? Could they have longer careers at Brighton if they'd been in a different situation at the Amex, at a better training ground? Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's another interesting one, isn't it, Jing? Like, again, we've spoken a lot about how difficult it is, not just for individual players, but how it affects everyone around you when you make these sorts of decisions, abuse. Or it's so tough being accused of, if your son or your husband or boyfriend or brother today's, because it was talking maybe 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. So social media wasn't such a big thing either. So it's not even like you could go to that as an outlet, creative outlet. You just sort of have to suck it up really and try to keep your head down, because like you said, players don't really speak out. It's not really the done thing. You're just an employee at the end of the day, and you just got to perform when you're told to. But I think that's something we touched upon before, Jing, isn't it, with some other players, like how it affects those people around you. And even if you're strong enough to, your wife's she isn't trained she hasn't gone through that kind of education, so she doesn't know how to deal with it, or your mum or your dad, they haven't been trained, they haven't grown up in a system where you have to deal with that sort of stuff. It must be really difficult for players to try to accept those types of scenarios, because it must be mentally very draining for players in that scenario.
Yeah, so once that situation happened, obviously, I'm sure it would have affected you quite a bit, having that you were from there, felt as if you should have been supported, and then that in the end sort of pushed you away from your club. And what was your mentality like when you were forced to move eventually? Was there something like you needed to prove yourself? That sort of like a chip on your shoulder after that situation occurred?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking at some point I would want to go back to the football club. So not a chip on my shoulder or holding anything against the football club. My thinking now was, and my career was a little bit based on this, right? I'm going to go away. I'm going to improve as a player. I'm going to come better. I'm going to get more experiences. I'm going to go up through the levels. I'm going to achieve things. I'm going to come back to this football club and I'm going to show why I was captain, why I was a good player. So it was just another thing to light my fire. It was another thing to inspire me. I used to use them things to when I had a bad day or a bad game. I used to use them to motivate me. No, right, where's the bigger picture? Again, I like to think experiences like that helped me. At the time, it was difficult, but I never felt it was too difficult for me because I was just solely focused on football. I was at Colchester now. I'd left the club. I wasn't at Brighton anymore. So, but like Chris said, it's right. It's, your family. My family were left behind. They were living in Sussex. They have to speak about people. They have to see the negativity. They have to read the articles. It's not nice for them, but I just tried to block it out as best as I could to concentrate on playing football.
I want to glaze a little bit over the Colchester bit because you were there for a period and then you moved on to Southampton. You were reunited with Dean Wilkins when he was there. That's I don't know, but from the outside looking in, that would seemingly be your best period in your career. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So what? How old are you now when you made the move from Colchester to Southampton? 25, 26?
26, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're coming into your prime now, aren't you? And I think quite quickly you were given the armband, weren't you? So straight away you were given a lot of responsibility. What was that like going into a new club and then quite quickly being made captain?
Well, I keep getting given these challenges, Chris, or these like difficult situations because
was no one else available? I mean,
no, someone was captain. I took the captain on. Technically, took the armband off someone who'd been Calvin Davis, and obviously at the highest level. Been at the football club for years, was the main or the top dog in the dressing room, put it that way.
Yeah.
And I remember Alan Pardew calling me and him into the office. And I'm thinking, right, what's this about? Maybe he just wants to run something over with the captain and an experienced player or get our opinion on something. And he just dropped the bomb in front of me and Calvin together. And I had to react within the meeting room with the manager, him offering me to be captain and kind of taking it away from Calvin. Like, he'd done it in a very, very diplomatic, very intelligent way where Calvin was kept on as, and rightly so, he was club captain. So he was still the club captain. And I was going to wear the armband on the match day. So basically, I got the best role. I got to wear the armband, but with no responsibility off the pitch, which is the best role as captain. You don't have to do boring stuff. Oh, it's amazing. So again, that didn't go down too well. Obviously, the best bit's been taken away. But it was a challenge again because I was into a new dressing room. I was still trying to prove myself as a player. I was fresh to the club. We were on minus 10 points at the time in League One, the club of the size of Southampton. But I just took it on board and was like, okay, look, I've just got to run with this. What am I going to do? Turn it down? No, not a chance. So you just have to, and again, another experience that probably, I don't know, grew my mentality, made me stronger. But I'm not going to lie to you. Again, fine on the pitch, really confident on the pitch, trusted my ability on the pitch. But the first few months there, 6 months maybe, difficult to settle because I didn't know whether the players would accept me. I didn't know whether, as a person, I meant them because they looked up to Calvin. They respected Calvin. He'd been at the club a long time. So I felt as I was having to fight battles off the pitch.
And there were some big players in that dressing room at that time as well.
Yeah, it was challenging, but again, I used to just come back to football and go, look, what am I here to do? I'm here to play football. I'm employed to play football. I love my career in football. So I just tried to concentrate on that, and the other bits just slowly got better. But you know what it's like, Chris. If you win games and you're doing well, everything's fine. And I was lucky at Southampton that we won a lot of matches and we were successful. So it slowly got a lot easier. But credit to Kelvin, he personally was very good with me. He was very accepting of the situation. He understood the situation. I just felt it took me a little bit more time to win the other players over.
What do you think? Sorry,
go ahead,
Dean. I'm very interested. That's twice now that you've become captain, and one with Southampton where you were relatively new to the club. What was said to you as the reason why you were made captain, or why do you think personally that you were given the armband?
I would probably say just because of my mentality on the pitch. I'd like to say I wasn't potentially a captain that would do huge speeches or motivate you off the pitch or within the dressing room beforehand. I would play my part, definitely. I would say things and try and only say things that were relevant and important. But I think I was a captain that led by example on the pitch, in training, would always set high standards, would always expect high standards of others within match situations or training situations. So I think that's the reason why I was made captain, because of my passion for the game, not necessarily what I could bring off the pitch. And that's probably why I was made team captain instead of club captain, which worked out fine for me.
No, spot on. Dean was our captain in the youth team. So no, 100%. He was a brilliant trainer. Definitely not like a ranter and raver. Wasn't someone who'd be barking out. I mean, you had that capacity if you wanted to, but you weren't really that type. There wasn't that type of leadership. It was definitely more lead by example. Definitely more, setting a standard. Doesn't matter if it was a basic passing drill, 5-a-side game on a Friday. Just having a really good mentality. So no, he's 100% spot on with that. But I mean, you essentially were the captain of an unbelievable Southampton side, and you, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 successive promotions. Is that right? Did you get promoted the first year? Or was it not the first year? Your second and third years? Is that right?
Second and third year. So the first year we were on -10, and we ended up 7th, so 5 points off the playoffs, I think. But we won. Right. We won the Paints Trophy that year at Wembley. So
okay.
That was good. But yeah, after the next season, it was back-to-back promotions from League One to the Premier League.
Yeah. And what was that like? Because that team was obviously stacked. Like a lot of players who would go on to play, be established household names in the Premier League by the time their careers were done. Did you have an inkling as you were going through that this team was special? Like this team is a team that's going to be, one for the ages with the Southampton faithful?
Yeah, it's easy to say now because we achieved it, but I would say there was a sense of it, and the sense was, Chris, players can have ability. Technically, we had technically brilliant players. We had players with ridiculous ability, but the players within the dressing room were good people as well, and hungry individuals to succeed. So their sole focus during that 2-year period was to get to the Premier League, and there was no outside influences. There was no distractions. It was such a good place to be at, so professional. I'm not saying we all loved each other and we were best of friends, but when we were in the training ground, when we played games, we were together, and it was a sole focus of everyone's life during that period. And that's why we were successful. Yes, we had good players, obviously, and we had a good coach in Dino and a good manager in Nigel. So that really helped. And we played, you touched on it before, we played a system that really allowed our players to express themselves, and again helped. But we used to work, we were fit, and I mean really, but football fit. We weren't just like running in straight lines. We were football fit. Everything was done with the ball. So we used to run over teams. But yeah, there was a real sense, but only from when we started to build a bit of momentum. Once we built that momentum and we were scoring goals, we were creating chances, the crowds, it's a huge thing in football, especially when you're playing in a football stadium, a big stadium, the crowds started to come back, the stadium started to fill up. the games were noisier. We were scoring more goals. It was more entertaining. You get the vibe. The environment was built. It just flowed. And once you start that, you just want to keep it going.
Yeah. I mean, Jing's probably wondering here, like, some of the caliber of players that you had at your team. I mean, you're talking like Adam Lallana would have been in that team. Oxlade-Chamberlain in that group when he got promoted out of League One or not? Did he come after?
Oxlade-Chamberlain, yeah.
No, so you're talking about like top England international caliber players like Ricky Lambert, for example. So all these guys went on to play for England. Like, did you feel they had that capacity in them when you were, because obviously they were probably quite young themselves coming up through the ranks of Southampton. Did you feel like those guys were going to be playing at Champions League winning Champions League medals and that sort of thing?
Chris, hard to say because I could never associate with it because obviously I'd not played in the Champions League. I'd not actually played in the Premier League, so I couldn't compare them. All I could say was every challenge that was put in front of them, they excelled at. In terms of the next level up, League One, winning a League One, they become the best players in that league. Moved up to the Championship, they became the best players in that league. So it's almost like when you speak of a goal scorer, they say, well, can they score at that level? It's not whether they can score or whether they're good enough at scoring. It's whether they'll get the opportunities. The goal doesn't move. The goalkeepers don't suddenly become a million times better. You don't play with a different ball or on a different surface. So all they needed was the platform and the opportunity. And every time they got that, whether it was Championship, Premier League, playing for England, in the Champions League, playing in Europe, they excelled. And they were that type of personality that once they were given the opportunity, they were going to take it with both hands.
Yeah. So I'm guessing, how old were they when they burst on the scene? I mean, they must have been in their late teens, early 20s at that time.
Yeah, so Adam Lallana would have been early 20s. We had Morgan Sneidlin, who would have been more.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oxlade-Chamberlain was 17, 18. You had James Ward-Prowse coming through. Luke Shaw was there. Obviously, he's at Man United now. And then you had the experience. I mean, Ricky would have been in his prime. Ricky's the same age as me, maybe a year older. So he'd been 26, 27. And Dan Harden, Dan Harden gets forgotten a little bit. Dan Harden was a brilliant left back. So fit, so strong. I mean, can you remember many players taking Dan Harden on? I can't remember. A one-on-one situation, if a winger was attacking him, you just couldn't get past him. But
so just for the listeners and the viewers, Dan Harden is my year at Brighton. So good friend of mine, good friend of yours as well. And yeah, he's just one of these players that he didn't look quick. He didn't look quick. He didn't we used to call him Mr. Tickle, like he was all arms and legs, right? But honest to God, like you couldn't beat him. You couldn't go around him. He just had this ability, didn't he, to sort of get his arms, get his long limbs in the way, and unbelievable, and like had a ridiculous career. Like most of his career in the Championship, done really well. So no, I totally agree. Like I look at that group. I remember. I think did you play in the game when you played Man United in the Cup? Did you play that? I think you played that day. I think you did play that day.
You there? Suspended, actually. I think I was suspended. We lose 2-1 or 3-1.
I think was it Chapo? The Chapo score. I forget the game. Yeah. So I just think I remember. I don't know if you're in the Premier League at that time, or if you were still in the Championship and sort of making inroads towards progressing to the Premier League. But I remember looking at that team thinking, wow, they've got something special there. There's a lot of players you could tell they were going to get cherry picked. I mean, it wasn't Southampton like we know now, where Liverpool just take everyone, but there was a lot of talent in that. There was a lot of talent in that team. You could tell that something was brewing, and obviously having a little connection with obviously the coaching staff and then some of the players. Like I looked out to that and watched you guys really intently, and it was amazing to see you guys develop and obviously getting back-to-back promotions. I mean, you found yourself reaching the pinnacle, which, as I alluded to at the beginning, I always felt that you had that capacity to get to that level, but it didn't quite work out for you, did it? It didn't quite pan out for you for reasons that I don't know. So I was hoping you would shed light on what happened between you going up from the Championship into the Premier League. What happened at the club there?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would have been the dream end, or the dream or the vision that I was sold to come from League One to the Premier League. To do it as captain would have been brilliant. We did that. We achieved that. But yeah, I never actually got the chance with Southampton to play in the Premier League with them. And that's just another side of football, and the industry side of football, where it's ruthless, where the club had worked so hard to get to that level that they went and spent a lot of money on players, and you get moved down the pecking order. And it was pretty clear, to be honest, Chris. Early on in pre-season, I was having a good pre-season. I felt good as a player. I came back really fit, ready for the challenge to prove myself in the Premier League. Knew it was going to be more of a challenge to get into the team or have a consistent place in the team. But yeah, I mean, my squad number got changed, it got suggested it was going to be changed. So I didn't understand the reason behind that, because I was 14. I wasn't like a prominent number where a striker coming in wanted to be number 9 or something.
Right.
So, and then I wasn't part of. We played Man City away on the first game of the season. We travelled up as a squad. I wasn't named on the bench. The manager put 4 defenders on the bench for some reason, which is again a strange reason. Ward-Prowse came in and made his debut at 17. And the captaincy was taken away. So I had a meeting with the manager. He told me I wasn't involved, and he took the captaincy away from me all in one meeting in the space of half an hour. So it was a little bit difficult to accept. I was very disappointed and frustrated. But the club were good with me, Chris, because they were honest. And I think that's come out of the game. I might not have liked the decision. I might not have agreed with the decision, but they were honest with me, and they told me, and the manager told me, and they helped me in the situation afterwards to get the move back to Brighton. So would I have liked the opportunity? Yes, of course, because my ultimate goal in my professional career was to play in the Premier League from where we come from at Brighton. And I felt so close to it then be taken away. It was very difficult. But getting the opportunity, like we spoke to earlier, to go back to Brighton, to right them wrongs, to prove myself, actually motivated me, as well as not playing in the Premier League. So I worked this scenario to my advantage in the end, which helped my career push on again.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you handled that with dignity. Maybe you didn't behind closed doors, or maybe just being nice on the podcast. Maybe you, maybe you. I'm guessing Nigel Adkins is the manager at this point, still, right? He was still the manager, right? I mean, look, that must have been incredibly difficult to accept. But no, I appreciate you giving us your version of events, because I can imagine a lot of people probably handled that in a far more negative way. But like you said, if people are willing to sit you down and do it in a professional manner, then I think, like you said, you don't have to like it, but you do have to accept it, because that is the nature of the game. But yeah, I know the story a little bit, so it now paves the way for you to go back home, so to speak. I'm going to glaze over the celebration, which is infamous. Jing, and any listeners, if they want to relive something, Jing, right? So I'll tell my version. If you want to elaborate or tell the real version, you can. But long story short, Dean comes back to Brighton, playing for Southampton, scores. I say score. You lightly touch the ball, right? Is it headed finish? Yeah. Glanced one in and celebrates. You know Marco Tardelli in the '82 World Cup, when he goes absolutely crazy. He does in front of the Brighton fans. He goes one of them. A bit of ear cupping involved, but which didn't really endear him to the Brighton fans. But is that a fair? I didn't want you to, because I know you spoke about it quite a bit. But
it's a fair assessment.
Fair assessment. Okay, so we'll leave that one there, because you do end up coming back, and Gus Poyet's the manager at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How's that move all come about?
That came about through Charlie Oakway rang Dan Harding. So Dan Harding was still at Southampton. Or Dan Harding might have actually just left to go to Nottingham Forest. So Dan rang me and said, Charlie wants your number, because Brighton were interested in bringing you back to Brighton under Gus. Would you be interested? So I said yes. Charlie knew my agent anyway. So I said, look, just speak to my agent, see if it's possible that it could happen. And that's where it started from. That started quite early on in pre-season, but it took a little while to get over the line because the clubs between Brighton and Southampton didn't have the best relationship. The managers didn't get on. Don't know why. The clubs, there was some friction between the chairmen at both clubs, so it wasn't the easiest deal to put together. But because of, I believe, this is where I think where Southampton helped me out, because of what the service I've given to the club in terms of going from League One to the Premier League. They kind of looked past that and said, look, I made it clear then if I wasn't going to be part of plans at Southampton, I'd like to go back to Brighton. And I met Gus, really impressed with him straight away. I knew some of the players at Brighton. The new stadium was there, Chris, which we were all sold as youngsters at 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
And I was going to get the opportunity to play there under a brilliant manager, we played against them the previous year, the way they play football, the expansive game they played. And it was a different football club now. They had finances, They had financial backing, they had ambition again. And it's a brilliant place to live. So it ticked a lot of boxes. I didn't get my chance to play in the Premier League, but if I was going to leave, it's the only place I really wanted to go. So that's how the move came about. And once both clubs had got past it, it moved pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, just to give everyone a picture of what it was like for us growing up in the academy, so Centre of Excellence, where the training ground was at the time, which is in Falmer, is kind of in between where I'm from, Lewes, and Brighton, the city. And there's a university campus either side of the main highway that runs between where I'm from, my town, and Brighton. And ever since, I'm going to say we were probably 13 or 14, weren't we, Dean? And they were saying, like, at Falmer, there's going to be this state-of-the-art stadium. Yeah. You guys are all going to get to play there one day. And it was like this beam of light that was put upon us as a real target for us all to aspire to. But basically, the long story short, Jing, is there was huge issues with like planning permission. Funny enough, the guy who kicked up all the fuss about it, he actually went to my school and played for my brother's Sunday league team. No, yeah, he's actually the guy who owns some property on the other side by the pond where we used to run. And yeah, it took forever to get over the line. And obviously, in your first tenure at the club, you didn't play at the Amex, but lo and behold, on your return, it all come to fruition. So American Express Stadium, Premier League caliber stadium, unbelievable setup. Everything had completely changed. I mean, what was that like? Because the team, obviously, it was. I mean, they played some unbelievable football. They had attracted some real promising up and coming youngsters. Did you get a sense at the time that was a team that was headed towards the Premier League? Was that ambition made clear when you went there, even though it was only on loan? But did you get that sort of vibe when you went back to the club?
Yeah, 100%. It was that was the sole ambition of the football club. Why they'd obviously built the stadium was to try and get back to the top level. There was the plans of a new training ground. We were still training at Falmer then, but there was the plans of a new training ground. They were starting to spend money. They bought Craig Smith for a large amount of money, which Brighton hadn't done for years. Gus had used his contacts in Spain and brought some really talented younger Spanish players in, and they were just. It was all geared to get to the Premier League, and we played a brand of football, Chris, that was just fantastic. And the way we worked on it in training, and the training methods that Gus had, very simple. They weren't like complicated or anything that another coach wouldn't be able to do, but they were just done at such a high tempo and such an intensity that when you played the game, it just flowed. So I knew straight away that we had a chance because I'd just been promoted the year before with Southampton, so I knew what the championship was about. The only reservation I had was whether we were going to score enough goals, because that is every team in football. You're based on that. You need to be able to score enough goals because you're gonna concede goals. It's as simple as that. And that was why we probably didn't go up automatically and why we got to the playoffs. We just didn't quite score enough goals. I think we drew 16 games that year, maybe, and we missed out on automatic promotion by 3 points. So that was the only thing, because we had so much possession of the football We dominated teams. We wore teams down, and we just ran out of time. Really, we was on such a good run towards the end of the season because he brought Matty Upson in January. He brought Leo Ajoa in January, where then I played again with Leicester. So it makes you smile because it was just a brilliant year. Year. I loved it. I must admit, we didn't technically achieve anything that year. We lost in the playoff final, but I look back with such fond memories. I loved it.
So you mentioned there you played with Leo Ajoa and then you teamed up with him at Leicester. So obviously you've then gone back to Southampton and then you've managed to negotiate the move to Leicester the following season. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So this will be under Nigel. Yeah. This will be under Nigel Pearson, right?
Yeah, Nigel Pearson.
Yeah. So, right. So he signed you, and you're obviously Championship club, but obviously unbeknownst to you at the time. But there's probably a handful of players from that squad that will go on to win the Premier League in a couple of seasons time. I mean, how would you describe your time at Leicester? How was it for you being in that environment with Nigel Pearson?
First of all, I loved my time there. Like as a family and as in my individual time, it was brilliant. The players were brilliant, and loved my football as well. Probably didn't play as much as I would like to have done. But that year we got put. The year I signed, we got promoted to the Premier League. And Nigel was a great manager, best manager I worked under as a manager. Not necessarily coach. His man management skills, honest, direct. His message was clear. Had full respect of every player. May not have liked him, but respected him. And had a presence. I think you need. That's my opinion. I've never been a coach or a manager, so I don't know, but. You need a presence. And that doesn't mean people need to fear you or are scared of you. You just need a presence that when the manager's talking or walks into a room, that the atmosphere just changes a little bit. And that might just be, it turns into a happy atmosphere. Not everyone goes quiet, but there's something. You'll know what I'm talking about. There's just something.
Yeah.
He had that. But he was good with me when I first signed that. And I knew the situation. He kind of signed me for my experience, not necessarily to play week in and week out. Who else
did he have? Yeah, so who else would he have had in centre midfield at that time?
So we had Danny Drinkwater, Matty James, Andy King. So it was us four of us vying for two positions. Right. And I did play. I think I made 38 appearances that season.
Yeah.
A majority were off the bench, but I was coming on for 20, 30 minutes most games. So I played my part, but it was a different part I played, and I quite enjoyed the role. Really, it was quite a.
Did you?
It was a bit, a little bit. It was different, but it was different responsibility because we won the championship by a canter that year. We were promoted with, I'm guessing, 8, 9, 10 games to go. So we won a lot of games that year, scored a lot of goals. So my job basically was, about 20, 25 minutes to go, I'd be brought on just to see the game out. Make sure everyone done their jobs, stayed disciplined, kept possession of the ball, and just done the boring side of the game. Make sure we won, and that was my role within the football club. And it was hard to accept to start with, but in the end, I enjoyed it because I had a role, I had a purpose there, if that makes sense. But then the second year, I got my opportunity in the Premier League, which is something that I'm very grateful for, and played a decent amount of times in the Premier League. The year we stayed up, but suffered with a lot of injuries as well, Chris. So an up and down year that year. But no, love my time at Leicester. Really, really good.
I want to know a little bit more about that year that you spent in the Premier League, because obviously you get to the pinnacle, you get to where you worked so hard your whole life to get to this point. I spoke to, like we said, we had Neil Etheridge, is probably the most high-profile goalkeeper that we've got. Played last year in the Premier League when he was with Cardiff, and he would talk about, like, there are times in the games where you think, this could be any level. It's not necessarily, could be the Premier League, could be League One, League Two, whatever. He said, then all of a sudden, bang, something happens, and you don't know what happens. Bang, 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 balls in the back of the net. He said, like, he would watch Man City sometimes, and you'd be like, the movement and the pace and the incision that they played with was just like on a level that he'd never seen before. Like, did you get to the Premier League and feel like, wow, like this is I can see why people see this as one of the best league in the world? Or did you get there and think, actually, no, like this is a standard that I'm capable of playing at?
Honestly, I think
yeah.
I felt the most comfortable I'd ever felt in my career. I know exactly what he's saying in terms of the quality and the pace and the caliber of the player. 100% agree with that. There is a huge difference within them split moments.
Right.
Not for long periods, but within them split moments when it really matters around the box, where a quick 1-2 and a cross and a goal, in a flash of an eye, the game's gone from you. But in terms of my position as playing as a holding midfield player, keeping possession, understanding the game, reading the game, I felt I was made for it. The only thing I felt the most comfortable. I played the best football of my career in that period, where I probably played 10, 11 games consistently in a row and started for Leicester. The only thing that went for me, Chris, my body came up and gave up on me because not gave up on me, but because I had to push myself to the limits to get myself as good as I could, to be the best I possibly could. I pushed myself so hard because I didn't have the natural attributes or natural physical ability of other people. I had to work hard every day in training, twice sometimes days in training, to keep at that level. Once I got to that level, I felt brilliant. My diet was spot on. My training methods, my confidence, my mentality was brilliant. But I just couldn't keep it going because my body broke down. And for example, I was saying about injuries, I tore my calf 5 times that season because it just wouldn't hold up on me.
Yeah. What was it about the game specifically then that you found, like, I don't say easier because that doesn't sound right, but what enables you to perhaps, like, was it a case of people gave you more time on the ball because maybe there's an assumed level of ability with everyone in the Premier League, so you might not necessarily be as engaged as you would be at a Championship level, where it might be a little bit more, the cut and thrust of the Championship might be a little higher? Well, what was it about the Premier League level that you felt was enabled you to play at a higher level?
You did get a little bit more time on the ball in certain areas of the football pitch. Also, the ball was on the floor more. It wasn't quite as direct as maybe the Championship or League One is. Players respected each other a little bit more in terms of, right, I know you're a good player, so I can't just dive in all over the place and rush to this area. It was more structured.
Right.
So I think that just suited my game. I was always comfortable in possession, Chris. I was pretty aware in possession. Never the quickest, but my positional sense was pretty good. So I always felt as though I could read a top level player better. I know this might sound weird, but I kind of read what they were going to do because they were good players. Now that might not make sense, but I knew a player if they were going to try and play it around the corner one touch. I knew whether they're going to run it and let it run across their body. Whereas if you're playing in the Championship or League One, don't get me wrong, brilliant players. And I was one of them players at one point and a long time in my career. You didn't always know exactly what you were going to do with the ball until you got it. Whereas top level players, they've got pictures in their head. So I could see from a player, I would have seen him look where he's going to pass it before he's even seen the ball, received the ball. So when he does a no-look pass, I know he's not passing it there because I've seen him look already. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
I felt the game suited me more. I probably got to the Premier League at the wrong age for my body, if that makes sense. Because I was playing in the Premier League at 32. I wish I'd been there at 28, maybe 27, 28. But I was lucky. I played with some brilliant players and had a great career, so I'm not moaning, believe me.
Yeah. Jing, I think that's a really interesting insight, isn't it? To like how, because obviously we see it from one perspective, multiple perspectives with the cameras, but the injury or the nuances you don't necessarily pick up until you actually play either alongside someone that's amazing or you play against someone that's really good. I don't know what your take on that, Jing, because I mean, we talked about similar things with in other episodes, but never with that level of detail. I thought that was really interesting.
No, it is. It makes a ton of sense, and I think it carries over to a lot of different fields. as well. You know, that a certain level of understanding of the game means certain things have become a little bit more predictable, whereas individuals who don't know what they're going to do with the ball or don't know what they're going to do in that specific situation until it arrives to them, how could you predict what they're going to do if they don't know what they're going to do, right? So it makes a ton of sense at that point. But when you made it to that stage, what interested me was it's been such a long journey. You know, it has taken you ups and downs, twists and turns, and there you were, finally. And you talked a lot about, you know, sort of being uncomfortable in being in new situations. But you said when you arrived in the Premier League, you felt like it was home. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely, because it's been where I've been trying to get to for my whole career, and it was. It's anything in life. I always felt as though if I got the opportunity, I could excel in the Premier League, or I could do well in the Premier League because my game was suited to it. A bit like Chris mentioned earlier, that getting an opportunity at Brighton when we were younger was difficult because it didn't suit the way we played or the way we were developed. I always thought that in the youth team at Brighton, when my foundations as a player were set, we were being moulded into players that could. Dino was looking at us to make us into players that could get to the top level, not necessarily in the first team at Brighton. So once I got there, I knew I'd be okay. It was just whether, the question mark was whether I could get there. That was always the issue. So I felt comfortable and I was as focused as I'd ever been. I dedicated my life to get there. So once I got the opportunity, and I'd lost it once at Southampton, there was no way I was ever going to change that. And I introduced different things into my game. I started to speak to a sports scientist, just a sports psychologist, just to maybe look into it, look into my mind a little bit more. Maybe look into, is there anything I can change in my lifestyle or my mentality or my thinking to make me a better player? So once I was there, I loved every minute of it and just wish it could have continued a bit longer.
Yeah. I remember reading a little bit about like some of the guys that you ended up having to compete with at that club. I mean, obviously, again, we talk about household names. I mean, World Cup winners. You know, you then find yourself, you know, sharing the change room with N'Golo Kante and people like that. You know, that will go on to win. I think Riyad Mahrez was there with you, right? Jamie Vardy, obviously. Yeah. Then these guys will obviously go on to win the Premier League. Technically, you were at the club, though, correct? When they won the Premier League, right? Is that how you tell? Is that how you describe it? Do you describe it as, I was at Leicester when they won the Premier League? Because technically, you were there, right? Is that?
I wouldn't be lying, would I? Technically, I like.
No, you're not lying. That is the truth. But obviously, yeah. I mean, you go out on loan, and they win the title under Ranieri, but. I wanted to throw that out there just in case anyone wants to know. Dean was at Leicester when they won the title, technically on the roster. Did you get a winner's medal? No,
definitely. You had to make. I think you had to make 15 appearances to get a medal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you missed out on that one.
Yeah, I missed out on that one.
But look, Dean, mate, I want to be really respectful of your time. So there's one other aspect that I really wanted to cover with you before we go, because it's just flown by. Honestly, it's been a real pleasure. So I wanted to just find out one last thing from you, because just a little bit about what you're doing now, really. I know you've got your you go into that fitness space, which you already alluded to, is something that you've been passionate about. I mean, since you were a kid, you were always unbelievably fit. I personally always thought you'd end up going to coaching. I thought that would be a natural progression for you. I mean, I mean, what's on the horizon for you? Like, I heard you say before you wouldn't be a coach. So I was just wondering what is the next step for you?
It's a difficult one, Chris, because if you're asking me if it was personally just down to me, I think I'd like to coach. I think I'd like to manage. But I've made the commitment to my family. I've got a family of 3 children. We're a busy family in terms of we do a lot. The kids are happy. They're thriving in life. So I'd feel again where, not feel as though I was already had my career in football, but I'd be being selfish to maybe be a dad that's not there for them as much as I want to be, if that makes sense. Now, that's not
Yeah.
judging anyone else or whatever. I just kind of already committed to that. But I had a period when I came out of the game, when I finished playing, and I went back to Leicester before I was loan manager. And I had a period where the 23s manager asked me to come in and mentor the players. So he came in and asked me to speak to the players, come in and train with the players. I eventually ended up playing again for the 23s because you could play an overage player. But I loved it. I think it was one of the most enjoyable 6 months of my life, that I could go in, I could speak to people, I could pass on my knowledge, my experiences, the goods, the bads, the ups, the downs, what I would do, what I wouldn't do if I had my time again. I could still physically train with the players, so I could pass on my experience within game situations or training situations, which you'll know as a coach. I believe that actually being able to demonstrate things is so much clearer than just being able to say, right, you need to do this. If you can demonstrate it and actually show someone how to do it, I think it fast tracks their development. So that's something I'm looking to go into. I've set up a fitness-based sort of business, but I want to do the one-on-one coaching. So it is part of coaching, but it's one-on-one development with players to make them technically better, to make them fitter, because fitness at top-level football now is so important. But during that coaching, pass on some knowledge, pass on some experience, try and help them through their career, try and help younger players. And I've got a big thing as well, Chris, because my career didn't end too well from a personal point of view and a mental point of view. I'd like to help older players as well, because I think they get forgotten. They get kind of like, you've had your career, you're not an asset anymore, you're not going to make us any money. The club and the associations just kind of push them aside. So I think there's a lot of help needed for the older players.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've actually got down here is, again, you sort of touched upon it in that Brighton interview. It was right at the end of the interview, but you didn't really get to elaborate on, like, it sounds as though the transition for you was quite difficult.
Yeah, it was a challenge, Chris, because I dedicated my whole life to football. I'd lived in that bubble, because it is a bubble. It's not really reality. And I'd had the happy experience of 6, 7, 8 years of real success in my career through Brighton, Southampton, Colchester, Leicester, where everything had gone well. I'd got the pats on the back, I'd got the praise. Times were happy. I went to Sheffield United and it didn't end well for me. I didn't perform and it affected me. I came out of the game, should have stayed in the game, could have kept playing, but I was mentally drained. I needed a break from it, and I thought as though I'd had a good enough career and I had a strong enough name that if I came away from it, I could get back in. That was wrong. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't have done that, and I couldn't get back in. So it affected me, and I was in... Look, you can only base your life on yourself. There's a lot of people in the world that have more issues than me, worse issues than me, but I can only base myself on my own life. And I was in a dark place for a bit. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't have direction. I was making silly decisions that impacted my life because I had nothing to focus on. I had no life goal anymore. My life goal was to play football and get to the Premier League. And any walk of life, I personally think if you lose that, I mean, what are you doing? Well, what are you heading for? You're just walking around in circles. And I lost my identity for a good 18 months to 2 years.
Really? So
yeah,
how did
difficult.
How did you go about starting to sort of turn that tide? Like what was the catalyst between obviously that point where you left Sheffield United, and again you spoke on the podcast a little bit. You know, you left the game thinking you can come back, obviously couldn't. Like, what was the catalyst to then bring you back to this place now where you seem a lot better, or is it still something that you kind of struggle with even at this point?
No, I must admit, I'm a lot better now. I'm a lot better in terms of my thinking patterns are a lot clearer. I found focus again. In terms of, I just started listening to people and associating myself with people that didn't have the same values as me in life. And once you do that, if you surround yourself with the wrong people or people that don't have the same ambition as you, you become them people. and I just got involved in things in terms of different businesses, different ventures that just weren't me, Chris. I didn't understand them.
Really?
I wasn't passionate about them. I ran away from football and fitness because it ended so badly for me. So the reason why I've come back to it is that I faced it now. I face my I suppose my fear of judgment by other people. I've stopped comparing myself to people and just gone, look, I'm me. I've gone back to doing the basics of, I love sport, I love football, I love helping people, I love passing on experience, and I think I can help people and I can make a change in other people's life like we were given. There's people in my life, and I expect the people in your life that are giving you opportunities and advice and helped you along the way. And I want to be one of them people now. So that's how I've got back to, and obviously my family, my kids are brilliant. So I'm grateful for that.
That's unbelievable, Dean. Like, I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that can't be hard to, as footballers, you don't necessarily open up to about things like that, do you? And I think it's becoming a little less of a taboo subject. People sort of talk about it in a little bit more open terms these days compared to how it was probably 10, 15 years ago. But I think it's a massive one. People losing their identity when they come out the game. I mean, it's what drives people to alcohol addiction, gambling problems, and people get forgotten. And it's a shame when you give so much of your life, you dedicate yourself to the profession, and then to not get looked after is really disappointing. So no, I think you'd be one who'd be great for that. The other thing, if anyone gets a chance to, first of all, follow Dean on his Instagram, his personal one and his fitness one. But he put out this amazing. It was about a minute and a half. You put out video. I think he just gone for a run, and I don't know what gave you this epiphany or whatever, but you basically, I'll paraphrase, but he basically said running is like life. It's hard. You can stop running if you don't feel like running anymore. No one's going to say anything, but you'll know within yourself if you've done the run or if you've not done it. And then if you push through those difficult aspects of the run, the uphills, the wind in your face or whatever it is, when you finish it and you complete it, you're like, oh, I feel brilliant. I feel really good about myself, and I feel like I've completed something. And I don't know if you got loads of messages off the back of it, but my brother, he sent it to me as soon as you put it up. And my brother's like, have you seen this? And it was only like a minute and a half. It wasn't like this interview, which is running on close to 2 hours, but it was perfect. It was succinct, and it actually was the catalyst to make me want to reach out to you, because I think you've got so much to give. Like you said, your experiences are so vast and varied and different. And I see the stuff that you're doing now, and that's really why I thought I'd love to see you coach, as in a team. I think from that perspective, you've got a lot to give. But I can also see you working, doing your one-to-one stuff. I've seen you do that already. I know it's kind of your formative stage of doing that, but it looks like you really enjoyed doing it. I love tuning in and trying to do it. I don't complete it, Jing. I'm not going to lie; it's bloody hard work. but no, it's brilliant. Like I've really enjoyed that aspect of your transition. So I hope if that's what gives you joy and that's what gives you satisfaction, then why try to put yourself in a position like coaching, which is a really all-encompassing type of role. I mean, like you said, Dean Wilkins was great as a father figure to all of us, but it must have been difficult for his kids or difficult for his wife, because he gave so much to us. Like, how are you going to be with your own kids? I struggled that with myself. So no, I just wanted to ask that question because I was always really intrigued. I always saw you as being a manager, and I just wanted to know what your take on it was. So, I mean, you've sort of half put that to bed, but there's definitely some coaching elements that are still in there somewhere. And then lastly, what are your kids playing? That's the other thing I was going to ask you. Like, are your kids playing football? What are they going to follow in Daddy's footsteps, or what's the deal there?
Well, I've got a daughter who's 11, so she's very academic. She loves her reading and writing. She writes stories and things like that. So not her. My middle boy is he's a talented. He's talented at all sports, which I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because he's not nailed down that. I think you can be a jack of all trades and good at, and brilliant at nothing. So,
but you were quite good at other sports, no? I remember you being quite good at cricket. You were quite good at cricket.
Yeah, cricket and tennis I enjoyed. Yeah, cricket and tennis. So my middle boy was at Brighton, so he was training at Lancing he started at under sixes, and he was there to the under eights. He's come away from that now where he wasn't quite ready for it. But I think he's got a life in sport, which is great to see, because I think sport is the best way to live your life personally. So if you can do that, that'd be great. And my youngest boy, who's 3, he's just he's brilliant. He's funny and he's crazy. So I don't know of him yet. He could. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on him, I think. So,
is it okay? Good.
Yeah, he's an interesting project, my youngest, but he's great. He's great fun. Yeah, he's great fun.
Is that his Hastings side? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
is that his,
It might be his Hastings side. Yeah.
Oh mate, I tell you what, I want to be respectful of your time, because it's gone on for 2 hours, and to be honest with you, mate, it's absolutely flown by. I've really enjoyed this. A lot of the people who listen to our podcast are young kids who are aspiring to be successful in football or academia or anything. A lot of coaches will listen to this. A lot of players will listen to this as well. People who aspire to be professional footballers, and I think some of the messages that things put out there are just, whether it's football or whether it's business or whether it's your personal life or whatever, I think they're just great morals and codes to live by. A lot of stuff that were instilled with us from the academy from a young age, and obviously he's carried that throughout his career, and then has achieved unbelievable success. Like just for me personally, Dean, like I said, we have, before the conversation started, we haven't spoken in 18 years, but from afar, me, probably other guys as well, live vicariously through the likes of you and Dan and people who came through the academy together, and just amazing. Like so proud that people from our neck of the woods, people for come through the same system as us, has gone on to have established careers in football. It's amazing. So, like, first of all, thanks for coming on. Congratulations on an unbelievable career. It was a privilege to play with you from 11 till 19, and to watch you like have an incredible career. From afar, it was really, really enjoyable, and I'm glad that we finally have had this opportunity to catch up and talk, because it's been a long time coming. But I'm hoping maybe our paths will cross again in the coaching circuit in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I would love to see. I would love to see that. I would love to see that happen. But I don't know what your thoughts on it, Jing. Any takeaways from you before we let Dean get on with his day?
I think it's tremendous just being able to listen to you guys speak and go through your experiences and the ups and downs and the ruthlessness, the reality of pro football and the curveballs along the way. It's not all just glory and glitter that people make it out to be. And it's nice to be able to get a glimpse of that, So thanks for the time, Dean, and it's a pleasure meeting you for the first time.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's nice to speak to you both, but it's great to speak to you again, Chris. So like you say, it's been a long time, mate. It's 18 years is a long time, but it's good. Look, it's great to see you guys doing so well. I must admit, it's brilliant. So no, it's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed talking about it, and hopefully we'll keep in contact and we can do it again sometime. Whatever you want, any help I can do, provide you with, would be brilliant.
Fantastic. Dean Hammond, folks, we hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, and look for us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. And with that, we'll catch you guys on the next Football Friday.